They just want to take a pill and feel better. I don't blame them, but that's not the way to do it. And I'll just use mushrooms as an example because it's becoming really trendy right now. A lot of people are turning to mushrooms for the quick fix for anxiety, a quick fix for depression, a quick fix for social anxiety, and using it as a way to, do the transformation for them rather than seeing it as a teacher that can help guide them on the path to what they need to understand within themselves to shift and to make a change on a regular basis to then be more in alignment with who they want to be, essentially.
Have you ever wondered if plants can truly communicate and transform us? Today, we're diving deep into the sacred world of plant medicine with our special guest, Haylee, a shamanic, herbalist, and medical intuitive. We'll explore the ethical use, the ceremonial importance, and how to fully embody the teachings of these powerful healers. Get ready to connect with the ancient wisdom and transformative power of plant medicine. Haylee, thanks for being here. I want to dive into the first question and get this conversation going because I know we have so much to chat about. In what ways do you think modern society misunderstands or misrepresents the true essence of plant medicine?
Great question. I think that there's a strong disconnect right now with modern society and their relationship with the true essence of plant medicine. I think it's moving in the direction of understanding it, but a lot of people are looking at it from a scientific perspective rather than working with the ancient carriers of the medicine. So a lot of the elders who have worked with plants for generations really understand the core essence of plants and their spirit and their energy, what they provide on a deeper level, and how to connect with them in ways in more of a ritualistic, like ceremonial way in a container that's held, and to properly honor and work with the plant in a way that is seeing them as more of an equal and seeing them as a teacher rather than, thinking that we are the higher level of consciousness. And so I think that, when we look at them from a perspective, there's a bunch of different things I could go into, whether it's like the allopathic perspective, like the modern way, which I think that's kind of like the main perspective I'll dive into right now is just the allopathic approach, where people will look at plants as they just want the quick fix. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the internal work. They just want to take a pill and feel better. I don't blame them, but that's not the way to do it. And so even with, I'll just use mushrooms as an example because it's becoming really trendy right now. A lot of people are turning to mushrooms for the quick fix for anxiety, a quick fix for depression, a quick fix for social anxiety, and using it as a way to, do the transformation for them rather than seeing it as a teacher that can help guide them on the path to what they need to understand within themselves to shift and to make a change on a regular basis to then be more in alignment with who they want to be, essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know a couple of people, like I had a friend the other day was telling me that her friend did ayahuasca like 13 times.
Right.
Right. That's a whole different medicine, but it isn't embodying anything that he's learning. So she's like, what's the point?
Exactly. That's the problem is people are looking for the quick fixes all the time. And, ayahuasca is a great example. There's so many people that keep on going back because you do feel better. You do have a shift in your brain chemistry. There are benefits to taking the medicine, but the integration is the most imperative component. And it is good to see more people focusing on the integration now. Like, I think people are really understanding that needs to be happening because for a while, there wasn't a main focus on that. And then you're this like blown open experience and you feel so much better, and you like shift in these ways. And you're shown how you can feel too. Sometimes the plant will show you like your true essence or this like energy that feels amazing. You feel connected to what you want to feel. And then after that, it kind of slowly, you get back into your everyday life and it slowly dissipates over time. So it really is the integration, to make it last and to make the changes in your life so you feel the way you want to feel. Yeah.
So when we talk about integration, what does that really mean? Right? Because people are going to, like, you have this blown out experience, like you said, you might see this thing, but how do I integrate that? Like, what does that even mean to somebody?
Totally. Yeah, from my perspective, the way that I kind of help people integrate after plant medicine work is through self-inquiry. So you ask questions about yourself, you get to know more about who you are. I mean, that's also like the preparation part too. You really understand kind of why you're doing this, going into this medicine ceremony. And then afterwards, it's basically creating some sort of daily routine, daily ritual, whether that's like a journal practice or meditation, or again, self-inquiry. Maybe you just learn how to ask more questions about what you are diving into around yourself. What else would I do? Recently, we've been diving more into journeying. So like really working with integrating shamanic journeying. So kind of getting that practice going. And then with that, go alongside the self-inquiry and journaling and meditation, you can really start to shift your patterns. And then even dream work, I mean, paying attention to your dreams, so much comes up in that space. And it's similar to the space that plant medicines provide. It's, just like that space where your subconscious can communicate with you. So oftentimes like doing a dream practice can be really supportive too when you're integrating.
So what is really happening when if somebody wants to just try this, right? I mean, we've heard the typical, like, let's just, the hippies, let's trip, let's do that. But that's not really the point of this, right? It's a container space. And then what are you experiencing? And I know that's going to be difficult to verbalize because it is. It's just, but to your best, the best way of doing that, what is that experience you're having with that plant medicine? What is it doing to your brain?
It depends on the plant medicine. So some will be working more on the dopamine, some are more serotonin, some are more DMT. So it kind of just, they all kind of shift it in a way that releases different chemicals, basically neurotransmitters. And then for the most part, they quiet down the part of your brain that usually rules your thoughts and your like perspective every day. So it quiets that down, and then it helps to release other chemicals to then open up different parts of your brain that can then perceive the world in a different way and kind of show you the way that you've been perceiving the world and show you a different way to see it from. So it can kind of help you get yourself out of your own way, essentially.
Is it always a pleasant experience?
No.
I know the answer to that, but I thought I'd ask.
Definitely not.
Because I mean, let's face it, a lot of people think, right, I'll take shrooms, it'll be great.
Sure.
I'll trip, or, and then it's not great. And so, right, it's like, what do you do? What do you do with that?
Yeah. Right. And I think that is more when you really need to have an integration afterwards to really dive into what was brought up, because I think overarching, right, like overall, it's not bad. It's,
right.
But the quote unquote bad trip is you're being shown your ego, you're being shown stuff that you haven't looked at that's presenting itself to you that you need to look at. And it can be really overwhelming. I mean, it also depends on the scenario, right? Like if you're in a ceremony, and if the intention of the leader isn't pure, isn't, if something's off in that space, then also that could lead to an experience that isn't as beneficial or, positive as it could be. So there's definitely different components to that, to a bad trip. But in general, when people have that, it's just like an ego dissolution. They're just experiencing a part of themselves that they don't want to see or haven't been wanting to look at. And it comes forth from the plant to see it and to work with it.
Right. It's just being shown to you. And speaking of ceremony,
yeah.
And I think that's a big part of this, and people need to understand, like you said, the intention before. Why are you doing this? And right. I know you've traveled, you've got a lot of experience in these, and I know there's a lot of different sacred ceremonies, but how do these ceremonies, in your opinion and in what you've experienced, differ across cultures? And like, what core elements do they all share?
It's a great question. I would say the core elements that they all share is the deep connection to the plant medicine that they're working with. Generally, it's pretty consistent space that's provided to either ingest the plant, to work with the spirit of the plant, or, they really usually just have one that they just deepen in, and that's kind of there, as far as I understand. Like some some cultures work with tobacco, and that can take you very deeply. And some have peyote, right? Some are San Pedro, ayahuasca, mushrooms, so kind of wherever it grows in the world is oftentimes where the people will work with that plant. And so then, yeah, so that's kind of, I would say the main component that I've seen is just their dedication to their respect and their consistency with using the plant on a regular basis. Yeah.
I mean, so if somebody wanted to try this, how do you pick out of all those things outside of going out of the trends, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, right? Mushrooms is trending, but if you're like, okay, I want to try plant medicine and I don't know anything about it, like what am I looking for as far as like ceremony or practitioner? And then how do I know what plant medicine to work with?
Yeah. I oftentimes feel like the one that you feel most in resonance with, the one that speaks to you the most, is the one to use. For instance, like I've done ayahuasca once, I ingested it, and the second time I sat in a ceremony and just connected with the spirit of it. And prior to that, it was loudly calling. Like I really felt as in resonance to sit with it, and I was kind of putting it out, or just felt like it was coming to me, basically. Like it was like, okay, this feels like I, am interested in it. And prior to that, I had no interest in it. When people would talk about it, it didn't seem like it resonated at all. And then all of a sudden it resonated. And so I went to a ceremony and it was beautiful. And then I haven't felt in resonance with it since. I just haven't felt like I've needed it, or it just doesn't feel in alignment right now. And so that's kind of the way I personally work with everything. And even with mushrooms, like, I think a lot of people do it, just because it feels like it's the answer for other people, and other people are having really positive responses. So then they'll think it's going to be the same for them. And it could, but it also might not be the plant to work with if they don't feel like, I guess just like for me, it comes as like a bodily sense, like a felt sense of this feels right. And then I just trust that. And even when I talk to people about ingesting mushrooms, it's, a lot of people will ask, well, how often should I ingest it? Like I want to get onto a microdosing protocol. Should I do it 5 days a week? Should I do it every other day? Like there's different, and my answer always is to just listen to what your body's telling you. And maybe you microdose once a month, and
Right.
and then you just feel into when you feel like it's right, and you just do that. Like it, that's how I operate. You could do research. You could see if there's specifics that you feel more in resonance with, then going about finding a practitioner. I mean, here, it's more in like with psychologists, or, there's more in that type of a space where people can do it legally. Otherwise or mushrooms specifically. And I think, and ketamine is legal in a lot of places. So you kind of want to go to like those types of like Oregon or, Oakland, there's certain places Denver where it's decriminalized and you can work with a psychologist there. But otherwise, ayahuasca generally is outside of the country. There's, obviously some in the country, but legally it's in other places. So, but Denver, I mean, I went to Denver recently, and they were promoting ayahuasca ceremonies at this cafe that I went to. Yeah. So it seems like Denver has, because it's decriminalized, they're more open about it. So that's a place that people could also go to and check out if they want to stay in the US. And so as far as I know, I'm not as like involved in that part of it, but that's what I would. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to also make sure you know the intention of the practitioner you're going to. Like we were kind of talking about before we came on, there's some people who are solely doing this to make money.
Right.
Like they could care less about your experience or the intent. They just know that ayahuasca or mushrooms, everybody's kind of drawn to it right now. And so we can make a lot of money, and let's do that. And, I think that's important of setting up the space, right? And you and I were talking about that, of how does that then transfer over to your experience if you're going to a practitioner who's just all money focused versus one who's like, no, I care about how this, is service to others and helping.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's everything. intention's everything. Intention within yourself prior to the ceremony is gonna form your ceremony, your experience. And so the person that is leading it, we talked earlier a little bit about the person even who's growing the plant, if they're growing mushrooms, and their intention with it, and then if they're making the medicine, if they're putting it into chocolate or whatever they're making it with, if their intentions to make money, or if their energy is not fully positive and clear and in alignment with like the highest good of the person who's going to be ingesting it, then that all is infused. And so it can either make a really potent, powerful, super, more transformative, clear medicine, or it can be muddled and it can have like their energy in there that, like I said, if they're like having a bad day and they've got a lot of negative thoughts, and maybe they're ruminating over something that wasn't positive in their life, and they're making this chocolate, that's all going to be in there. And so then your experience when you ingest it has that energy in there as well, and so the same thing with a ceremony, of course, it's the person holding the container really needs to make sure that they're clear, and that, their intention is pure, and that they are there to support the transformation of everybody, to bring them to their highest self, essentially. It's everything.
And when we say container, explain what that is. Because there's I know and but some people are probably like, what are you talking about?
There we go. You blanked out there. Okay. Sorry, pause on my end. I want to show. That's mine. It might be mine. So a container, so the container is like, if you go to a ceremony and the person who's running it, who's leading it, really it's making the space sacred. It's clearing the space of any energy that was there prior, making sure that space is just essentially as like pure light as you can get it, whether that's like saging and smudging, or drumming, kind of whatever their process is, calling in their guides, like whatever that looks like to get the space clear. And then ultimately you create like I think essentially a bubble of support around the space. So that way nothing can come in, because a lot of times when we ingest plant medicine, there's energies that are really drawn to that. And so that are external, like, different entities, or, just different energy that exists outside that we can't see, can be really drawn to it. So the space needs to be protected. So it needs to be just held. So that way everybody is really safe in their exploration, and nothing's happening and that shouldn't be happening.
Would be a good thing.
That would be a good thing.
Right. So when you're talking, two things. How do you prepare someone spiritually and mentally, right, before introducing them to the plant medicine in the ceremonial setting? Because I want to come back to entities, but I first want to hit on that, is how can someone prepare for, something like this experience?
Yeah, definitely. The way that I personally help people prepare, there's many different ways. But from what I know that I would help somebody with is, again, a self-inquiry. So getting really clear on what the point, what their purpose is, what their intention is, what they want to get out of it. Establishing a practice prior to the ingestion of the ceremony, where you're a daily practice, like a ritual, same type of thing as the integration, a place you're creating a sacred container for yourself, or a sacred space for yourself to have self-inquiry, to sit with, to sit with yourself, whatever that looks like, to observe yourself, to learn about, yourself, to get into your subconscious mind as much as you can. And then also to, what else would you do? I mean, there's so many things. Dream work really, it kind of is just, it is very similar to the integration, because again, these spaces help us to deepen in our connection to ourself, and to deepen in our connection to our higher selves. So like dream work, paying attention to that, what's being shown in your dreams. So if you pay attention to your dreams prior to a ceremony, a lot of times they're really potent, and they'll guide you with what you need to look at within yourself, especially if it can be challenging to understand that part outside of dream work. So like if you're having a hard time, understanding, why you're going into it, where you need to learn about yourself, or what you want to bring forth in the ceremony, dream work can be really beneficial in that space as well. And then what else? Let me just think for a minute.
I think also just being open to it. You know what I mean? There's
Open
a lot
to
of people,
it.
if you go in thinking this isn't going to work, or, this is just
Oh, it's
woo woo,
huge.
or, right?
Yes.
Like, especially if
Yeah.
you've never done it and without expectations. I mean, that's
That's
something I've
exactly
had to
it.
learn.
Yep.
To always go, okay, I don't know what's going to happen and I don't expect anything to happen, but I just am open to whatever's going to happen.
Exactly. That's huge. No expectations, no attachments, no aversions, just allowing it to be what it is. Yeah. Because exactly, like you could go in, I mean, your intention's everything, but it probably won't manifest in the way that you're thinking it's going to manifest. So, I think that really, yeah, exactly, being open to whatever the plant wants to teach you and show you and present to you is definitely the best space. Yeah.
Because I know
Yeah.
some people go in and be like, well, it didn't happen and I wanted this. And it's like, no, no, no. You're
Yeah,
trying to control the outcome, and that's not being open
exactly.
to the medicine.
Right. Which is like the teacher for life, like a lot of times, like there's so much in that one ceremony that amplifies out for everyday life,
Yeah.
you
And then you got
know?
to sit with that and go, okay, let me look at it without, because we can't fathom in our brains how things are going to like most of the time, at least in my experience with all my energy work and all that, what you think you could come up with what's going to happen and what actually happens
Yeah,
are things that you would never be able to even think of.
totally.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I didn't see that, like, never saw that coming, or I never saw that happening, you
Exactly.
know? And it's like, yeah, you weren't supposed to. You're supposed to be open to something new. That's the whole
Right.
point.
Right. It is. And if you have an attachment to what you want the outcome to be, then your experience of suffering will be that much more rather than being open to whatever is and taking it as it comes and working with what you're presented. Yeah.
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 Right. Because we like to control.
We all do. Most of us do. Oh, yeah. And I mean, and that's the thing is like plant medicine, if you try to control it, you're going to suffer a lot more, But if you're just being present with it and going into the pain or going into the struggle or whatever it's coming up that feels really dark or intense or heavy, it's like, yeah, the more that you avoid it, the more challenging it's going to be, the more suffering you're going to feel. But once you go into that, it's on the other side of that is so much beauty. Generally, that's the portal to get you into this expanded state to then really get into what the plant wants to show you. So it is you're moving through, oftentimes hardship to then get to what what they want to provide, what the plants want to provide for you. You know,
Right. It's not an escapism method. So let's just
right,
put that out.
right, totally, yeah,
Like, it's going to be hard. And I want to touch back because I know you talked about entities, and this is something
mm.
you and I have kind of talked about recently of how does that happen and what are you talking about? Like, what are entities? Because I know people are going to go right to like demons and, all the worst possible things they can think of.
Sure, which definitely exists. There's definitely the darker energies. Sometimes it can just be an earthbound spirit that's here that
Mm-hmm.
hasn't crossed over. That's looking for a body, and then energetic interference really is kind of the main category of it all, which entities fall into that. But energetic interference too can be, kind of pulling in somebody else's energy. So if you're in a ceremony with somebody and maybe you both have like the quality of like jealousy or, something that isn't like whatever your egoic patterning is, then you can actually share because you kind of like resonantly, you match, there's a resonance there. And with that, you can share your energy. And so you have like a part of them, quote unquote, in your energy field, and then vice versa. Sometimes you'll swap, or you'll just kind of share each other's energy. So then you leave a ceremony feeling not fully like yourself, like something's just a little bit off, and it could amplify your jealousy. Maybe you feel more, egoic in some way, or your pattern's stronger in some way, or just, again, you can just kind of feel not quite right. And so then what needs to happen is you need to clear that out essentially. And so, yeah, entities, so that can happen. Being in a body is really as far as I know, appealing to these earthbound spirits. They want to be in a body.
Well, sure. If you're not in one, who wouldn't?
Yeah, right.
It's like, yeah, I'd like to be in one.
They want to experience what it feels like to be, having
Yeah.
all the qualities of being a human. Like it, as far as I know, this is what my understanding is so if there's an earthbound spirit kind of hanging out, looking for a vessel to go into, and then you open up through plant medicine or like alcohol or certain things, or really like also any types of drugs will also do this. It just opens you up and kind of makes you a beacon for them to see that you are a space for them to come into. And so, I mean, this is a big thing that I personally feel afraid of for people who are just eating mushrooms and going out, or acid, or, or even drinking a lot, and going to festivals or going to these big events, or bars or places where there's a lot of people, and, you can share these energies with other people in that space. Like if you're in a festival and you are, on some kind of drug or plant medicine, and then you swap energy there, and then you just don't quite feel like yourself, or the entity can come in if you're out, so it really is important to learn how to protect yourself and how to like live in the right relationship with these plants, and not take it. So I think people are taking it really lightly right now, and of course go out and have fun. I think that there's a benefit to not drinking alcohol. There's
Right.
a lot of stuff that's just detrimental to our health. And I love this shift. I'm really grateful that people are shifting away from it. And what's his name? Huberman Lab came out with a podcast that talks about alcohol and how it impacts your brain and affects your system. And it's great. I love it because it's all scientific. He's awesome.
Yeah.
And
I love him.
Love him. And so it's cool because you can kind of just see like, there's just a big shift right now. A lot of like non-alcoholic drinks are starting to become, more popular. And so that's good. But then with people switching to mushrooms, and eating that, then there's still a space that is open, that isn't really like talked about. And a lot of the elders that I've learned from have said the same thing. This is a common, a common piece of wisdom that they all have said. So because everybody has said the same thing, then I feel like it's got to be the truth.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's like,
Especially if the elders are right. It's passed down and they're sharing it. Like
right.
They're not just making this stuff up.
They're not making it up, and they work with the plants on such a deeper level that they really understand these subtle components and these energetics of them. And so, yeah.
So the earthbound spirits, are they human spirit? Like what is
Could
an
be.
earthbound spirit?
Yeah, it could be a human spirit. Definitely. Yeah. 'Cause people die, if you die in a traumatic way, for instance, say if you get into a car accident, and it's very unexpected, you might not know that you've died. Some people aren't aware that they're not. So I actually watched this Netflix show recently that was super fascinating. And this one woman was talking about these souls who had died during the tsunami in Japan. And they came to her and they didn't know that they were not here anymore, or that they were dead. And she was saying that and they have a lot of happenings there, where souls will like get into a cab and they'll look like a real person, and then they'll just like disappear. They'll be gone. So there's like a lot of stuff happening. Yeah. And so there was a lot, I'm not sure now, but yeah, so that's pretty common. Or if people are attached to being here after they die, they won't necessarily cross over and they'll still be here. Yeah.
I've heard that too. I've heard that if it's a tragic death that can be quickness, the soul doesn't have time to recognize like it's dead.
Yeah.
So you see people helping other souls cross over and be like, you're not here anymore.
Right.
Like, it's time to go.
Right. Yeah. Psychopomp work.
Yeah. I mean, we could see them doing that. But I've never thought of, and it's funny because I've done ceremonies and sessions, and I've never thought about taking on other people's energy. And I just had a friend recently who had a ceremony. I don't know. She went in Montana with a group of women, and they were doing drumming. Mm-hmm. And they were putting the drum over them. So they would have somebody lay under the drum. and they would have another one like just come out and drum, and she said this woman, for whatever reason, her energy really bothered her because she was really seemed angry, even though out on the
Mm,
outside she was very sweet. She goes, but inside, she goes, I could feel her anger. And so she goes, and of course they paired me with her. She had to lay under the drum. I had to sit on top. And she goes, and I just went into this like trance state, and I just started pounding the crap out of this drum. And she goes, and
yeah.
all of a sudden the woman underneath just started crying,
Oh,
like
yeah.
sobbing, sobbing, sobbing. And she's like, they came out, and she's like, and she goes, I was so much of in a trance that I kept going, and everybody in the circle had stopped and just was watching us.
Oh, I bet.
Like,
I believe
whatever.
it.
Then she goes, when I came out of it, I was like, what just happened?
Yeah. Oh, I totally believe it. Drumming puts you right into a trance. Yeah.
Well, and she's like, and the poor woman underneath me is just bawling. And
Yes,
she never
absolutely.
said she was angry, but she's like, she looked at me and she's like, why did you do that? And she's like, I don't know. I just felt like I needed to just
Clear it.
drum, yeah, get it out.
That's
I was angry. She
beautiful.
goes, I'm not angry, but I guess it
Yeah,
was her energy she was feeling.
definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you can then because then she felt weird, right? Because then they had this thing where they went to the river and they were releasing whatever energy, and she goes, and here she comes towards me again, and I was like, I can't with this woman. Like I couldn't get rid of her energy after that.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you release that? Like if that happens, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I only know how to release it through the methods that I've learned through the shamanic
Yeah.
path. I personally recently did a meditation or a journey to assist this person who had recently died, and I felt a lot of their energy. So I didn't do it right. I didn't do it right at all because I was so excited and what's the word? Eager to just support this soul who had passed because theirs was traumatic, and I wanted to help them cross over and just to kind of see what they needed for support, and just knowing it's like knowing this work is crazy. Like, it's I just learning a psychopomp work and learning how to help with energetic interference like that, basically, right? That's a soul part that basically went from that woman into the other woman. So she took it on.
Right.
And I mean, it happens all the time. It happens super easily. And there's so much work that needs to be done with just that alone. I mean, anyway, so I was helping him, and I didn't do all the processes that I've been taught to do. And I even went into the journey, and my guide was telling me what to do, but I didn't understand what it was telling me, and I bypassed, and I just went right in to help. And it was one of the most intense experiences of my life. And it took me a week to clear it. And I didn't feel like myself in a very deep level. I was much more short tempered, very aggravated, quick to just feel angry. Just definitely a lot of emotions where I'm like, oh, man, this is not me. And I was exhausted, like so exhausted, no energy. And so it was like feeding off my life force. And what I understood was this person had an entity in him, which was really impacting his mental health. And so, which oftentimes, like, the more I get into this work and the more people that I work with who have mental health problems seem to have an entity or an energetic interference. Like, it seems like it's not fully them. Something else is interfering with that. And so I actually am like getting really curious even more about helping people who have mental health, even anxiety, depression, but like, like bipolar has been like really specifically kind of calling my name a lot recently. And like people are just diagnosed bipolar and put on these meds. And I'm like, I don't know if I think it's like an entity. Like I think something just needs to be removed from them, or somebody else's energy, is enmeshed. And, so yeah, like I have all these tools, and it's taking me a really long time to clear it. And I finally feel so much better. Like it took a while. And so without those tools, I'd be screwed. It would be so screwed. And I know that I've had entities in me from the past. When I was little, I used to be like super into all this stuff, like talking to spirits. Like I've always wanted to work with ghosts. Like I was like, just put me into a haunted place. Like I just want to you know,
I know, I do that too. I love, yeah.
love that world. Not everybody loves
Yeah.
that world, like
No, I
that.
know they don't, but
Yeah,
I'm fascinated with
me
it.
too. And so I think the reason is, well, when I was little, I definitely didn't do it right, right? Like as a kid, you're just doing it. You're opening up, playing the
Right.
Ouija board, right? Like whatever the heck you want to do. But that actually does call in the spirits. Like you actually are summoning them when you do that stuff. And as a kid, I just didn't know that obviously it could attach to me. And so I've had a couple of sessions where they've been like, yeah, you have 4 entities in you. Like this one woman removed them at one point, and I think they either came back or I don't know if it was fully properly done, but then so it's been a whole thing. So I personally have had experiences with entities in me, and now after this journey that I did, it was very clear what had happened. And so like, yeah, so I don't know what to tell other people who feel this way. I would say just continue clearing, but really I think you need to work with somebody to properly do it. It just depends, and it depends on the situation, right? So for her, taking on this person as anger, she could probably clear it by herself, just
Right.
with intention. If she's got a practice, or if she's got guides, like I would probably journey to her guides or just ask for help and just do it consistently until it feels better. And if it doesn't work after a certain amount of time, then yeah, I would see somebody. If it's an entities can be hard sometimes. If they are of ill intent, then they might not want to leave, and you might have to do some deeper work to get them out. A lot of times it is an energy or a being that does want to be supportive. Like, in some of the sessions that I've done, they're like, basically will come in when a kid has like a traumatic experience and they're looking for help, like a reprieve. And then an entity will knowingly or unknowingly kind of present themselves. And really the kid might just feel like they just want to feel better, and then this entity will enter. So there has to be an agreement on some level, but even if you don't realize you're asking for it as a kid, like I don't know, I'm not sure how that can happen if there's an agreement, but I forget, my teachers talked about this specifically. But yeah, so and then it just comes in. So the intention could be to protect the child who didn't feel safe. So, and was experiencing maybe like, abuse or something where they just felt like they couldn't, handle it. So then they're here protecting them, and they're not of ill intent, but they've been there for the whole life. And then the person becomes an adult and they're like, I just don't quite feel how I know I can feel, or maybe they have health issues or something's kind of off and not quite right. And so then you go into it and it turns out that there's this entity that's been there since they were 5 protecting them. And then really somebody needs to remove that. And sometimes you have to like convince them to leave, or really like, thank them for what they did as a child, but you don't need them as an adult anymore. And then they can move on. So yeah. So, just, it really does depend on the situation and scenario with what's happening, but it's so real. It's so real. I could get into so many stories, like just crazy stuff where people feel night and day difference after having these removals, and
Does there have to be an agreement? Because I don't want people to get freaked out. Here's what I don't want to do is freak people out about doing energy work and all that, other than be like, well, I don't want an entity, so I ain't opening up to any of this. Do you know what I mean? How
but if
does
it's a
that
safe
work?
container, yeah, if you're receiving energy work and the practitioner has a clear intention and the space is clear,
Right.
if they know what they're doing, you're going to be fine. It's not going to come in. No. When it comes in when you don't have a clear intention, when you don't have a safe container, and you're just opening yourself up to it, And so I'll just use mushrooms as an example again. If you are just like, well, I just want to like take mushrooms and like, whatever, I'm open to whatever. I'm
Right.
just going to take them. And just like go out in the world, go out into like the middle of the city and like walk around. I don't know, just whatever,
Right. Yeah, just to experience it on the shrooms.
Right. Then it's like, okay, well, you're opening to whatever. So there's
Right.
no clear intention of I'm going, this is what I want to do. So I want to get out of it, and holding that intention, and there's no protection there. And so because you're doing it by yourself without those components, no, yeah, I mean, that's different. But working with practitioners, working with people who know what they're doing, no, you'll be fine. Yeah, absolutely.
that's why I always say use discernment and really investigate your practitioners and, talk to friends who have done that. Like I've worked with Haylee on a lot of things, so I know Haylee and I trust her. And I use discernment because it is your energy and it is sacred, and I'm not going to just open it up for anybody. And I think that's, what people, like you said, they want a quick fix. And so many people can claim that they can do certain things for you, but they don't really have the responsibilities of being an ethical practitioner to really do it.
Right.
Or somebody will say, "Oh, I have shrooms." Well, you have no idea where those shrooms came from.
Right.
Right. Like, I don't know where those, and I'm going to ingest that in my body. And now what?
Totally. Yeah.
I don't. So it is also doing your research and looking at the people you're working with and opening up to, because I don't think enough people talk about that, to your point of the container and what is the responsibility of a practitioner and a participant.
Yeah.
Right. Like you said. And I know people have done that who are like, oh, I'll take shrooms and just walk around and I just want to experience the city and it's so alive. And it's like, yeah, okay, but you've just opened yourself up energetically to like
right.
everything around you.
Right.
And then they'll come out of it, to your point, and say, well, it was just a bad trip, or I'm not feeling the same way. And you're saying, yeah, but there could also be something else now attached to you.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me, because now I'm like, okay, somebody needs to do just entity scans. Like I just...
Oh my God. I mean, I'm getting so much more involved in this because of that. It's, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and soul part exchange, right? Like that's kind of what I think what your could have been what your friend experienced is basically, like I said, like taking on a part of this other person that wasn't there so they don't feel like themselves. And that is something in general that everybody could do all the time, is clear out soul parts of other people that they've engaged with, hung out with, spent time with. My teacher Isa has talked about, specifically like drinking and drugging. That's what she says. She's like, when you're drinking and drugging with a lot of people, like that's when this happens super easily. And so, yeah, that alone, aside from just entities, just having a person next to you, having their energy in yours. Yeah, we need to have more soul scans or whatever,
I think to your point, the woman at the end of that retreat for my friend said she felt amazing.
Of course.
She felt amazing. And my friend was like, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
And so she ended up having to go I think she went to a Reiki practitioner or whatever and had energy work done and had it. Cause she's like, I just felt, I didn't feel great.
Yeah.
And I was annoyed with her.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great, yes. So common. And if she were to be trained in the ability to do that, essentially it's like, there's all these different components to making sure that it doesn't happen. So if you're not doing that prior to working with somebody in that, with that degree, then yeah, of course, she just...
Well, and should the practitioner who was running the ceremony or the whatever she was in, which was a type of ceremony, like should they have been well versed in that to be able to say, knowing I'm taking you people through this, you know what I mean? And this might happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's not a state that people oftentimes get into, with her getting into that trance state and just doing it. Like maybe it's not as intense. It seemed like they were kind of in shock that was happening. So like maybe the person leading it, their intention's just like a little bit of a healing or a little bit of an experience, but she's not maybe, maybe she's unaware that would go that deep. And so hopefully moving forward, she would have that, that information that happened. And then, to either, have everybody set the intention for it to be really, really light. So that way they aren't allowing themselves to go so into that deep trance state without knowing what they're doing. Because I mean, if her intention is to go really deep and to clear out stuff from people with people who aren't trained in it, then that's absolutely, doesn't make any sense. I think that was
the whole point of the drumming. But to your point, like when I did the sweat lodge, I had a woman who like, and now I'm thinking about that because I never thought about it when I was doing it, that, you could take on other people's, but you're in this dark little lodge, like obviously sweating, and they called it prayers when they would call in whatever hot stone that wanted to come in, right? And this one woman like lost it. Like she went on and on and on and on, and that was not. And the lady that was leading it was like, that is not. You know, she distinctly told us like, this isn't therapy. Basically, it's just these are quick releases of stuff you. But this woman just lost it. And the energetic feeling in that lodge, she had to actually have them lift both flaps and clear the energy out because it was just so heavy after this woman like lost her and was crying and crying and crying and crying. And it was like, oh my God, you could just almost feel it in there. Like, this is thick. And so now I'm thinking, I'm like, did we all just then take that on? Because it was like this,
Yeah, it depends, you know. I mean, if and I don't know a lot about Sweat Lodge. I'm not really sure. I would say like if you didn't feel anything after that, then you're fine.
Well, the nice thing about that with us and what I liked about the Sweat Lodge was going in, they would sage you and they would have you tobacco. You would offer tobacco and you would go in with a clear intention. And then when you came out, they would sage you again and you would offer more tobacco and leave anything that you no longer. So there was a intention on the energy you came in and came out with.
Great.
So.
And they cleared you. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
you all had to be saged and you all had to be, you know, and then they would water you down and stuff and tell you to like, just go breathe and let it process.
but yeah, that's exactly it. So that's they know what they're doing. You know, though I'm sure the people who led the Sweat Lodge have been doing that for a very long time and understand that, you know, could happen, but they know the protocol and they know how to make it so that doesn't occur, you know, and they probably, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be afraid with, it's exactly the same thing. Just people who have been doing it for a long time, who are trained in the traditions. And a lot of times people can't lead certain ceremonies and, you know, the Sweat Lodge, or, you know, it takes a while to get initiated into that path. Like sometimes people don't.
Oh yeah. It took her years. Like she goes to Iceland and does things over there with the Nordic.
That's how it should be. And like here we are trying to be on the fast track of doing it. People are like, oh, well, I ate mushrooms a couple times. Yeah, I could lead you in you know, yeah, I could hold this container for you. Totally. Of course you can hold a container for somebody, you know, but you might take on some of their shit that they're releasing, or you might give them something, you know, you just don't know. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be worried ever going to, well, I don't know. Never mind. It just depends. But yeah, I think in general, because ayahuasca, I've heard of people going to ayahuasca ceremonies outside of the country and having really bad experiences, you know, because a lot of like the intention isn't clear and pure either. So it is tough. It's tough. And it definitely is something to think about. It's not all, you know, but yeah, I don't want to scare anybody away from it, but it's definitely, you know, I would say just using their intuition and really tuning into, the person. And if they feel any inkling of this just doesn't feel right, then listening to that, you know, and just trusting their gut.
Yeah, because I didn't feel anything when I left. I mean, that was one of the most profound experiences of my life.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? And she had asked her to leave the Sweat Lodge after that.
Okay.
You know, mainly because she was like, you need to like go settle and purge. You know what I mean? And she did it very graciously and nicely. And they told us that they ever asked. Because the other thing was, if you left the lodge, you would do 10 rounds of these stones coming in. But once you left, you couldn't come back in. And it was, you know what I mean? So it was to hold the container and the sacredness and understand. And to your point, trust your intuition. If you need to go, you need to go.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not for you. It's not trying to force you. And I think that's the key of not having expectations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And at least at that time, you know, maybe it's just too much right now, but down the line it would be the right time.
Yeah. You can always go back. I mean, that's one thing I think people are always like, oh, I got to do this once. And it's like, no, you can. I don't know that I want to do ayahuasca 13 times. I mean, you know, at some point you got to look at yourself and go, what am I learning from this?
Right. What's my intention? Am I going to be, do I want to carry this medicine? Am I training to be, you know, a leader in this field, or to, you know, to learn under somebody, or am I just avoiding doing the actual work? And I just utilize the medicine to, you know, to fix all my problems, and it's not fixing them. So I just keep on going back thinking that I will. Yeah, totally.
Do it more and more and it'll go away. It's like, no, you have to do the work.
Yeah.
You know, that's the whole point. These are tools. They're not end all be alls. It's finding that. So how do you
Yeah.
see two things I know you're passionate about, and something is the sourcing of the plant medicine.
Uh-huh.
Like, what guidelines do you think any practitioners or people should be using universally in dealing with ethically sourcing these plants, right? Because if it's about intention, we also want to make sure that we're getting them from intentional places
Yeah.
versus, hey, I'm going to grow a ton of this, and then that way I'll make a lot of money. And
Depends on who you talk to, but I feel like growing it with, again, the intention to shift consciousness, the intention to assist in, people becoming more connected to the highest version of themselves, right? So like people are like, I am growing this medicine, I'm connecting to it because I want to see a shift in humanity, because we need to become, we need to work with our egos in a different way. We need to become more aware of ourselves. We need to be more light beings, essentially. And so looking at the plant as a teacher, looking at the plant as a guide, and also something I always tell people too is like, if you look at it as a teacher and something that's here to guide you on with your process, say, if you're looking at it as like you're in college, right? You're taking a college course. This professor is changing your life. They're really impacting you. They're teaching you all these things that you've never learned, that you never knew before. But once that class is over, it's on you to implement that information. It's on you to, integrate it into your life, to utilize it and to spread it and to make the change within yourself, or to just apply the information. And so looking at the plant as this is a teacher, and, so the person growing it, looking at it and honoring it that way, is really important, because that's what it is. Right. And so if they're not honoring it, if they're, again, just looking at it as dollar signs or just, wanting to whatever, then it's going to be a different medicine. It's going to be completely different. And, I guess I can use an example too with the preparation of the medicine. I mean, so I did a peyote ceremony with a couple of shamanic practitioners, I don't know, like a year and a half ago. And it was really beautiful, really gentle. And the woman who was making the medicine didn't allow anybody else except for the other shamanic practitioner to be present with the medicine. Like nobody could be in the space, so they had to sit with it and pray. They prayed over it, and everything was just in that same kind of container that you create. And their intention was gentle and light and beautiful, and so they kept on just infusing it with that intention. And so that was what the ceremony was like. It was really amazing, and it wasn't intense at all. You could take a decent amount of the medicine, and still it was beautiful. The ceremony prior to that, with the same space, a different woman had made the medicine, and she brings you deep. It's like akin to like Scorpio, right? You're like, oh shit, like this is going to be a second thing. But, that wasn't thought about because she's so pure too. Like her intention's so pure. She's so, knows the medicine. She's worked with it for many, many, many years. But because of her relationship to the medicine and her relationship with human transformation and her connection to that plant with that intention, that's what she does for her personal ceremonies. Just her energy, the ceremony was a very different ceremony. Everybody came out of it like, what just happened? They were rocked. And they didn't even have to drink that much of it. Didn't have anything to do with the amount that they consumed. It was 100% the intention of the different practitioners. And like I said, it was a night and day difference with the ceremony. And they realized halfway through the other ceremony, the main practitioner was like, she's like, what's happening? Like, this never happens in my ceremonies. Like, my ceremonies are always gentle and beautiful and like, sweet and like playful. And she's like, oh, right. I had her make it. That's never going to happen again. Because that's not this. Like, this is not what I'm not looking to provide that for these. So it was, and that is it. And that's it. And so with the person who's making it, or growing it, that is what could make a big difference for everybody's experience. Yeah. Is there anything else you want me to, I know I talked about this a little bit before, but is there anything else? Does that answer your question around what you're looking for?
Yeah. Because I
Okay.
think it's important for people to realize the energetics with the plant medicine. You know what I mean? And we know that in all various kinds of energy work, but I think I don't think people realize that when it comes to plant medicine. I don't, for whatever reason, people I've talked to, it's like, well, the plant has its own energy and it's great. And it's like,
Sure.
yeah, but
It
the person
does.
working with the plant also, it's a dance. They're dancing together. The
It
energy is
is.
intertwining.
Yes, it absolutely is. And, I guess one thing that I would say if people buy medicine, specifically if they buy mushrooms from somebody else, and if they don't know the person who worked with it, then I would clear it. I would I would sage it or, whatever you use to clear, I would just clear it. And maybe if people have anything that they can infuse it with, like a sound bowl or a tuning fork or, even a drum, like some kind of like sound to then just do that, clear it with sound. And then I would just put my hands over it and hold it to my heart and like really infuse it with my own energy and just light and my intention and like really just try to shift it, and pray over it and just do all the things that I know how to do or like, simple techniques that people can do to shift it prior to the ingestion. So you're not only being clear with yourself and your personal intention, but you're also being really clear with the intention that you're putting into the medicine prior to ingesting it. And that could be, that could definitely be beneficial and helpful.
No, that's good. I'm glad you said that because that's great advice for people to understand that your energy can also affect things.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
you're not just withholden to whatever,
You're not.
you know.
No, no. I mean, yeah, that's what I would suggest to have people do. You know, yeah, that's what I would say. I mean,
How,
there's some simple techniques. Yeah.
how do you see the role of plant medicine evolving in holistic health and mainstream wellness going forward?
So much. I mean, there's such a big shift in this direction. I really do see it becoming more of a regular like a regular tool for people to utilize. A lot of people have been having some deep transformative experiences. They have been having less anxiety, less depression. There have been a lot of changes that have been really beneficial. And I guess my personal thing, honestly, this is kind of how I feel is I feel like we're going to have like, I don't know, like maybe 5 to 10 years of plants. I mean, even herbalism is becoming more popular. Like a lot of people are starting to realize that natural medicine is the way to go. And, and used in conjunction with meditation, with exercise, with proper diet. So there is a lot of, shifting across the board and more awareness of the importance of proper lifestyle changes, which is really awesome to see. And so mushrooms and other plant medicines are definitely playing a role in that and kind of helping us access these different parts of ourselves that we might not have access to on a regular basis. So yeah, I do. I see it as an amazing tool that it's only going to get more, legalized and decriminalized and accepted. I see it's very similar to the path that probably weed took, where now we have all these dispensaries and taking CBD to help you, with your pain or sleep or, even THC to help support, there's just so much with it. I do feel like it probably will take a similar path. And I think even the pharmaceutical companies are starting to isolate some of the components of mushrooms to use in like pill form to, help maybe see if they can take out certain components that kind of like taking out CBD and not having the THC. I think they're trying to look at how they can take out parts to help with mental health, I think more so specifically, without having to have the tripping experience. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, that could be helpful. I always am like way more of like a whole plant person. Like everything has its like benefits and the constituents. And then I think from my perspective, I feel like after probably, yeah, like I said, like maybe like a decade of really deep diving and kind of amplifying this, maybe shifting away from it, and then really realizing that like ultimately we don't need anything. We just kind of need tools to get us out of the funks, like out of like the depths, or the if you look at like the lotus, right, like out of the muck and the mud, and then to get us to that space where we have a harder time accessing without the support of it, and then eventually we can just do it, without it.
Without tripping without ayahuasca or all that.
That's kind of, I mean, I don't know. Or at least less of a reliance on it, like maybe like, like once in a while to really just kind of, if you're really stuck, you use the plant to help you become unstuck. I don't know. That's kind of my thought, is I think it'll shift. And,
I mean, it makes sense. Look at, Wim Hof and all that, when they're using their brain, their mind, right? Like they're removing out of that and using the power within to heal themselves, right, or overcome things. Or, I mean, we have humans who are already doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. I think a lot of people who are already doing it, I would be curious to talk to a lot of people who are already doing it, these other methods, how they feel about plant medicine. Because personally, my path is, I just did this training recently. And after this super transformative training, I didn't want anything in my body. Like even recently, the past couple of days, which is like so not me. I've never been drawn to being a vegetarian. Like even that feels like something's shifting in my body where I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like I don't, I'm just observing that.
Really?
Yeah. Which might just be for this weekend. Like I'm doing another training this weekend. And like, maybe it's just to kind of go into it without any, animal products, but I don't know, it is what it is. But I don't think it meets very different conversation, but, I just feel like the more clear that I become, the less I want plant medicines, that are consciousness shifting. The less I feel like I need them, the more that I feel like I'm already in that space that they provide. Like I feel like I'm accessing that part within myself naturally, and I don't feel like they are shifting me, or they aren't providing what I was looking for before when I was ingesting them, and I have a very different practice of journeying now, like more of a shamanic practice, right? And like very deep meditation practice, and even self-inquiry and self-observation. And so I feel like with those on a regular basis, I don't know. It definitely feels different. And even prior to this training, for instance, like I was drinking like margaritas and like mezcal, like I love mezcal. And I was like having like such a good time, but, and I was like, this is great. Like, and then after the training, it was like, I wanted nothing to do with alcohol, very specifically alcohol. It was just a clear no. And ever since then, it's been a clear no. I don't want anything to do with it. I have no desire to have any alcohol in my system, and it might change. But I feel like I said, the more I become a clear vessel and the more I shift, kind of the less stuff that I want in it. But that's not to say that like other people on the plant path, or, the more that they shift, maybe they deepen in their relationship to the plant medicine. Like maybe their connection to ayahuasca deepens, or mushrooms deepens, because they're meant to, utilize that medicine on their path, or whatever that looks like. Like everybody, I think you just become clearer altogether, and you become clear with what is going to be beneficial and what's not going to be beneficial. And everybody has, their place with what they're doing.
That makes sense. I mean, alcohol has never done well with my body.
Yeah.
And my mom will make fun of me all the time because she's like, you don't ever drink. You never really have.
Yeah.
And like, I just never liked the way it affected my body. I can't. It just never was beneficial.
Totally.
And I think for me, every time I turn to any type of plant medicine, it's when I feel really energetically blocked.
Yes, that's how I feel. And usually
like,
it's mushrooms. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can't get through something. Like, I know, recently I was like, hey, I need some cacao. Do you have some cacao?
Yeah.
I need to work with this. That's what was calling to me, which really has never called to me ever before.
Yep. Exactly.
And I know all about it and the stuff you've done, but it was never anything that called to me. But recently it's like, okay, I need to work with this medicine because I'm blocked and I can't figure out how to move through this, and it's like, okay, so I don't have any expectations, and Like I was telling you before we jumped on here, I took it yesterday, had a small little personal ceremony, and my world is a mess today. So it's a lot of fun. You have those moments where you're like, I signed up for this.
Yeah.
I signed up for this. You know what I mean? But
Right.
I needed it to show me, what's the
Exactly.
problem. And I think that's the key. If anybody can take that away, is understanding it can be messy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't feel good sometimes, a lot
Yep.
of the time.
Yep.
But when you do work through it and you get through it and you have that release, it's all worth it. And you realize that. So I think those are, if you just walk away and go, this was a bad trip, or this was just bad medicine, or this plant sucks.
Right.
She doesn't know what she's talking about. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
no, let it teach you. You're not allowing then, I don't think, it to teach you anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it probably could be even, I'd be curious to talk to the elders about that too. Like if it's just not in resonance, if it's just not your medicine, if it's not, or right. If it's, you're just not seeing what it's showing you, I mean, I definitely resonated with peyote way more than ayahuasca. I loved peyote, but also the ceremony was
Really?
gentle. Oh yeah. And my body did. It was like my cellular system wanted it. So whatever it was providing for my like physical body,
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but it felt supportive. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's probably it's probably super nuanced and, very
I've never felt
individualistic.
called to do ayahuasca. I still don't feel called to do ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Which, right, mentally, sometimes I'm like, why? But I feel more called to do mushrooms. I've done microdosing, obviously, but like more fuller, potent ones than ayahuasca.
Yeah. Right. And that's exactly it. And I bet if you hadn't felt like you didn't want to take it, but then you went to a ceremony because maybe somebody told you you should take it, and then you did, you might not have a good experience. You could have a good experience. It could show you, it could be totally different, but it also might not be what other people are looking to receive because you aren't feeling in alignment with it, And that's kind
Right.
of
My
like,
intention
right. It's just,
isn't lined up.
right. And which is again, like what I want people to understand with mushrooms is like, just because somebody else's anxiety and depression is being supported by ingesting mushrooms, it doesn't necessarily mean that yours is going to. So really just listening to yourself, listening to your body and what feels in alignment with you is optimal. And also other plants can be really supportive, I mean, you could sit in ceremony with, I don't know, lavender, or like chamomile or something that's like so gentle and soothing and is supportive for anxiety. And if you deepen in your relationship to it, or you really create a sacred space to ingest it and to work with the spirit and to like get to know it, it's really gentle. It's not going to push you through the door like these other plants do, but it could be more beneficial even. Really kind of, and it depends too, like what level you need support on, the way that I'm starting to understand even more around working with the different bodies, right? We got like the physical body, the mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies. And there's, like plant essences. We're kind of getting off track. Sorry, I know, but like plant essences, like the vibrational component of plants really can help your spiritual body, so if you just need like a little bit of like a subtle shift, then working with a plant spirit alone could be helpful. You don't even have to ingest it if you work with the spirit. And then if you want to work on a vibrational level, you could do, like for instance, like Bach flower remedies are a good, right? And so people will ingest, like a big one is the stress remedy. And a lot of people notice a shift when they take that. And it's,
I had some profound
I believe it.
experiences from flower essence that kind of caught me by surprise.
It does, because it's right. So that also might just be what somebody needs, is a subtle energetic shift that the plant will provide for them to have the physical change. It's not only physical that's needed, so you, right. And so, and a lot of times the disease and the issues stem from an imbalance in our spiritual body. And, and then it comes in, right. We've got like, the mental or is it, I always forget if it's mental or emotional. Maybe it's emotional first. But then it comes in and we'll have like, anxiety, or we'll feel just like emotionally distraught. And then it'll come into like mental patterns. And we've got all these thought patterns that feel out of alignment or feel off. And then it comes into the physical, and it manifests in physical pain. And we generally don't listen until it's physical pain, because we can override our thought patterns.
Right.
We can go out and have some drinks with friends. We can, meditate, numb it. We can any coping mechanism. Yeah, exactly. That like you can utilize to shift, or not shift really, just to kind of like, right. Oh, Band-Aid it. You Band-Aid it. Right. So like you can easily do all these things to avoid those energetic levels. But once your physical body's yelling at you, that's when you pay attention to it. And unfortunately, that's usually can be more challenging to clear and to shift than the other parts that were presenting themselves prior to that. And so, if we heal the energetic on the outside, a lot of times that will trickle down and will clear the physical. So we don't even have to, like I said, ingest the plant medicine or something. It could just be energetic that we have to work with them with. And yeah,
no, that's actually a really good point. And probably, I don't know if you would suggest this too. And I would say if you want to try, if you've never worked with any plant medicine, flower essence is a great place to start, because it was, at least for me, seems it's an easier place, you know what I mean, to start and not have to know so much information as you're working with it. And it was something I had to go through when I was getting certified as a spiritual life coach. We had to do flower essence.
Yeah. Awesome.
Our professor would give us like slides of flowers, and we had to intuitively write down what we felt the flower was saying, what would it help, and then and then we would have to share it and say, okay, let's talk about that. So she gave us like 10 slides of flowers and said, I just want you to intuitively, no name, no telling us what it was, but link with the spirit of the flower and write down, what is it telling you, what is it saying, what it'll help you with.
Oh, that's
and so
awesome.
I was surprised, because we had to buy some flower essences, and then they taught us how to make them. And it was like, I was surprised at how much one of those, like, really, it was, I forget which, it was a desert one from Arizona, because I was there, and it just, I had to stop taking it.
Yeah.
Because it was hitting me so hard.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what is going on? And my professor was like, okay, well then just stop dosing for a day, because, we would have to change every week. We had to try a new dose of a different flower essence and write down what was happening, how it was helping us. And one of them, it was like emergency something. I forget what it was called. And it just was, I go, I can't. This is wreaking havoc. Like, I need to slow down. This is too much. And she's like, okay, take some couple days off and just work with the flower.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that reminds me of working with this Native American herbalist. Her name's Karen Sanders. She's used to be up in Northern California, but then she moved to Washington. And I did this, what was the training? The Emergent. It was, I forget what it was called, but it was something along the lines of basically working with the spirit the whole time, right? So we sat with the plants, and she taught us this thing called heart breath, which really, Heart Math Institute talks about it. It's just like this ancient way of connecting to the spirit of the plants, ancient way of like connecting to yourself. You want to ultimately entrain with your heart, and then your brain is secondary. So really you want to open up this space and live from here, which makes so much sense, and there's even more studies coming out now about the benefits of really focusing on your heart as the main space where your energy is. And so anyway, so we just sat with the plants and did this heart breath and quieted our minds, and just, then you just see what they have to say and share with you. And also you do feel a shift, just with that alone, you feel your energetic body changes. And then we ingested, similar to kind of what you experienced, where they didn't tell us what the plant was. We sat together as a group, and we each took one drop of this medicine that she had made. And then we just sat. And I think it was probably for like 20 minutes. I think we just listened and just silenced our minds and tuned into our heart. And then we shared what we felt, and we shared what messages we received or whatever came through. And then she would tell us what the medicine was. And everybody picked up the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, I got that it was this, and I felt this, and this is where it went in my body. Right. It's crazy. And you're like, dude, and that's one drop. And that's, and it's so, I mean, her medicine's different than flower essences, because she actually takes the plant material and cooks it down for a while. And then that's like a potent form of it. But even still, one drop is you're never gonna trip. You're never gonna
Right.
it's never gonna be too much. I mean, for you, it was a lot, of course. Yeah, because you're shifting, it can shift you in faster levels than you realize. Definitely. It definitely can open up and change you with just that one. Yeah. And so a lot of us had just like beautiful experiences. You know, that energetic body is powerful to work with, and we forget about it a lot. We just focus on the physical, you know. And the last thing I want to say too about it is just this other teacher talked about how they would just write the plant name on a piece of paper and have people hold it, and they would see shifting in people. And so it's like, yeah, there's been, the herbal world is absolutely incredible. And a lot of these older herbal teachers have done some really cool stuff that I'm excited for more of it to come out, you know, and for more people to start working with plants this way. And to, I mean, this kind of goes back to like the sustainability of plants. I mean, I focus on mushrooms, but like overarching, you know, the sustainability of plants with herbalism becoming more trendy and more popular is the over harvesting. And, you know, we're starting to see certain species go extinct, you know, like sandalwood, I think is still on the extinction list. Like United Plant Savers is this beautiful organization, nonprofit organization that looks at and keeps track of the plants that are at risk for extinction or, you know, becoming endangered species. And so you can go onto their website and just see what plants are at risk and make, you know, informed choices based on what you utilize moving forward. And, you know, so that's just like a really important resource to have, because as this is becoming bigger and bigger, you know, people are ingesting more and making more products, and, you know, and if we can use the energetics of them, if we can shift as much as possible to the subtleties, to these drop doses, you know, to the flower essences, and still feel an impact, and that's optimal for everybody, you know. And then again, same thing as working with these teacher plants, you actually ingest it less overall, you know. And it's really empowering to not feel like you need to ingest plants or anything consistently, right? Like it's, you know, so that's kind of like, yeah.
I mean, I think the key is not using them as a crutch, you know what I mean? And understanding they are a sacred tool.
Exactly.
You know, and for me, mushrooms, like I just love mushrooms in general, like just regular mushrooms.
Yes, exactly.
So I just have this weird affinity with mushrooms because I have a couple of friends that are like, ugh, mushroom. But I love them. So,
yeah, me too.
You know, and you gave me lion's mane to help me with my brain injury, and you know what I mean? And then I went with a friend when I went back to Buffalo, and he took me mushroom hunting in the actual forest and the parks around Buffalo, and we were but he was very conscious. He's actually starting a mushroom company.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, because he's very big on sacredness and growing, you know, ethical mushrooms. But we went out and, you know, and we found this beautiful lion's mane mushroom, but we only took, you know, enough because he's very conscious of leaving and not taking much. But I learned a lot from him, you know, chicken mushroom. And then we found this one called dead man's finger mushroom, which really looks like a dead man's finger. It's weird. It was weird, but it was just cool to get out there to learn, and to also, I think the key to that is also understanding you don't need to take it all. You know, you only need enough, and if we can just connect the essence, and then like you said, we don't even have to ingest them. That's even better. I didn't even know that you could hold the name of it, and it would, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it does when you understand like the energetics of things, you know, but it's still crazy that just doing that alone can make a difference. I mean, it still doesn't quite make sense. I thought it was
crazy when you realize flower essence, they're just floating the flower in the water for so long, and you're taking that water, and you know, I get the energetics, but I'm like, okay, like how potent can that be? And then I'm digesting it, and I'm like, oh, I got to stop with this one. Like this is
absolutely,
I'm like, you know, like this is how potent it can be.
Absolutely,
like, yeah. It was crazy, but it was cool, and I was like, okay, this is super cool.
It is.
You know, the plant medicine alone, we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, I know.
And we will, because everybody loves hearing you. How can people connect with you if they need to or want to work with you?
They can go to my website, www.hayleylacroix.com, and that's the best way. And then they can connect that way, sending me an email or, well, reaching out on the submission form or whatever way is easiest.
Okay. Are there any last parting words you want to give anybody out there who's looking to either start dabbling into plant medicine or just are intrigued to learn more about it?
Yeah, I would say just, using your intuition, being strong with your intention, learning some basic clearing techniques, and then some basic protection techniques would be beneficial, and then implementing those, and then establishing a daily ritual within yourself. And yeah, that's what I would say. And have fun and enjoy being a human as much as possible.
Haley, thank you for being on here, my friend. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. Thanks for having me, Beckett.
Everybody else, stay curious, stay empowered, and keep shining your unique light. We'll see you on the next one.